so often New Year's resolutions, when I see how people approach them, don't feel very like grounded in the reality of the present. They feel a lot like what like leadership teams do when they make strategy, where they're just like, what if we were different people working at a different company in a different world? What would we do then? You know? And hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Rodney Evans, and that guy is my co-host, Sam Spurlin.
What up, Rodney Evans? How are you on this fine day?
I am great. I got sap in my hair. Welcome to At Work with the Ready. It's a podcast. It's a podcast, Sam, and it's a podcast about work. It's about modernizing organizations as the future of work tumbles toward us and meets us here in the present.
And as you all know, each episode we turn our attention to one common organizational pattern, unless we're not, that we think is worth digging into, and we pull it apart like a couple of kids going ham on some presents on Christmas morning, and we propose solutions for what to do instead. But like I said, we're not actually doing that today because today's a fun retro episode.
We're not, but you had to pull apart, and we had to hear it, and it was a really joyful one, a joyful seasonal pull apart.
Well, Rodney, I'm a joyful person.
Are you?
Do you know this? Trying on a new persona.
Of the like top 5 adjectives that spring to mind, I feel like you're more kind than joyful.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like the adjectives were going to be bad.
I may be
They're still
jolly
nice.
before I'm joyful.
I would take jolly before joyful too.
Okay.
Anyway, that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to do our annual look back. It's a kickback. It's a look back. We're going to retro our year as co-hosts making this show and talk about the best and the worst of what we have made here together in 2024.
Hell yeah. Let's check in though first.
Should we? I totally forgot about that part. So number 1 is Rodney doesn't remember the format of the show. That's the first retrospective point.
It's fine. That's why I'm here. I'm just holding the structure. Just
holding it down. I'm so focused on not moving my chair or touching anything that I can't also read the mural board.
This is going to be a good one. I can already tell. Rodney, what is your relationship to New Year resolutions?
Hate them. I hate them. I think they're stupid and I hate them. I like to have intentions for myself and for the year, maybe. But I do feel like so often New Year's resolutions, when I see how people approach them, don't feel very like grounded in the reality of the present. They feel a lot like what like leadership teams do when they make strategy, where they're just like, what if we were different people working at a different company in a different world? What would we do then? You know? And it's like, I'm not going to run a marathon next year. I don't even want to. And I feel like that's the problem with resolutions. And so to the extent that I have routines that I want to install, etc., I'm much more of someone who's like, this month, every day, I'm going to practice the cello before 9 a.m. because after that, the day gets away from me, which I've been doing, PS, and it's going great because I have a new teacher and I'm low-key terrified of him. And for me, that works better than like an annual goal.
Yeah.
And
that's
you?
Cool.
And you, Senior Spurlin?
Similarly, I think one kind of evolution of my thinking about New Year resolutions is that I am more on board with the idea that it's cool to get like a burst of motivation at the turn of the year, and using that burst of motivation toward a personal development goal of some sort is awesome. And I'm very supportive of that. And I think everything you said about kind of the form that often takes leaves things to be desired. But in general, I have tried to be less curmudgeonly about New Year resolutions and just like be happy for people. I don't really do New Year's resolutions.
Just let them have their resolutions.
Yeah.
Let's not ruin their fun.
Exactly. One last little bonus here. This is your 200th episode of this podcast. And I have a question about that later, so we can hold it.
Me too.
Congratulations. 200 episodes. 200 of anything is a lot. And
Wow.
200, nearly hour-long episodes of a podcast, that's a lot.
That's a lot of episodes. Well, thank you. And thanks for being on this show with me. And thank you to the people who are listening to it. There's so many of you. It truly blows my mind. It's been really fun. It's been really fun. And I'm excited to make, I don't know if I'll make 200 more, but I'm excited to make one more today.
This isn't going to be the last one, as far as I know. Unless this retro goes really off the rails.
There's actually something that I want to talk to you about at the end.
We're actually done.
Just, I want you to really enjoy this one, Sam. I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
No, we have big plans for 2025 that Sam and I and Jack are super excited about. So we thought it would be nice to like wind this year up with a little bit of reflection so that we can go fucking ham on our 2025 season.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you with has she ever, it's hard to believe I've done 200 of these. I'm going to ask you with a question. I'm going to start with a question about taking over co-host duties.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked you to do the Future of HR arc with me, it was like a little bit of a flyer because you and I weren't working together on anything. I felt like you would just be good at it because you like talking and I like talking to you. Mm-hmm. And we did a test episode and it was like knife through butter, so smooth, so fun, so easy. And then we made that arc and then you graciously agreed to keep on doing this. What was like hard about taking over and what was easy? Yeah.
All right.
What's that thing called? Thorns, buds, flowers. I don't fucking know, dude. You know what I mean. The good stuff and the bad stuff.
I got you. Good stuff and the bad stuff. I mean, the glib answer, and I promise I will go deeper than this, is that it's felt actually quite easy across the board, which is probably why we're still doing it, and I think having a lot of fun. That being said, I think there was definitely less so now, but more so early on. You don't replace an Aaron.
Sure.
I have such huge respect for Aaron and, starting this company and writing the book. And for a little bit of the time, it was like, it just feels like I'm discount Aaron on the podcast. And if I'm just discount Aaron, like this is not going to go great. So I got to like just figure out my own thing that I'm bringing to it and not worry so much about who used to be in this spot. So that was definitely in my head early on. And then just from like a making of the podcast, I think you and I have really challenged ourselves to not just make generic episodes about topics. There's so much that we can just take a thing from the OS Canvas and talk about it for an hour. We're both very capable of that. But our idea for this run of the podcast is to take a very specific pattern, a very specific slice of something that is happening within organizations and really try to unpack that potentially very narrow, very small thing and just finding those and finding ones that are specific, but there's enough there to actually talk about for 45 minutes. It's been a good intellectual challenge, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Talking to you has not been hard. Just showing up and like doing the episodes. Like, I think actually I am surprised that there's more prep involved than maybe I had assumed, because all other podcasts that I've done have just been of the flavor where me and my co-host, we show up and we shoot the shit for a while. And we do that, but we also have a decent amount of prep kind of behind the scenes for what we are going to talk about. And I didn't quite have my mind wrapped around that in the first couple of episodes. But now I feel like, we have all the structure in place and the routines around kind of doing that prep ahead of time where it feels complete, but not overwhelming.
Yeah, totally.
Let me ask you a question that's not even on here. What has your experience been of me taking over as co-host? Same question, I guess. Like, what has been hard or surprising about having somebody else in this seat. You've done 200 episodes. The vast majority of those were with Aaron. So
Yeah.
what has been different for you?
Yeah. I mean, similar to things that you said, like I think Aaron and my show was very much about just he and I having a time to kind of catch up and nerd out about something. And we didn't do a lot of prep. It was quite windy. And that was like kind of, I think, what we both wanted to do at the time. It was like we were very much in the place, I think, of a growing company or two, and a lot of like sense making and a lot of just exploration. And so I think that you moving into the co-host seat was a really good um, it was a really good forcing function to be like, let's not make that show. Like, let's not make
Right.
the show that Aaron and I made because A, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And B, like, this is an opportunity to think differently about what we're doing. And I think that actually the podcast is a little bit of a microcosm of what's happened at the Ready, which is, you know, you and I and Jack really run this podcast like a small cross-functional dialed team. And like we have strategy meetings, we have metrics, we have retrospectives, we have feedback loops with our listeners and with our internal members and with our clients. Like it is not two good friends with microphones vibing anymore. Now it is something that is supposed to do something, and you and I and Jack determine each season what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so I think that like what was hard for me is that initially that felt like it was going to be a lot more work actually to try to like be thoughtful and disciplined and have a point of view and run this like a team and blah, 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 blah. Actually, over time, because we've built systems, it's easier. So it's like you and I and Jack have a lot of role clarity. I have time in my calendar to do certain things. 90% of our prep is async. Like the show has performed super, super well with you in this seat. And that was only just like the most visible change. Like we made a lot of other changes under the hood that people probably weren't really aware of. And so that was the part that was a little bit hard for me to get my head around. I was like, this is a lot of levers to pull at once. But now it feels just like easy and smooth. And it feels like we're making the shows that people want to hear. We're like in real conversation with the audience and with the market and with our clients. And so that just feels great.
Cool. That sounds good. Do we want to stay? I do have one kind of variation on that question, which is just with the 200 episodes, like what do you feel like has been your growth as a podcaster from episode 1, 15 years ago to episode 200 today? That was hyperbolic. It wasn't 15 years. It just felt that way. Rodney, I can no longer hear you. Rodney, I can no longer hear you. I think you may have muted yourself. Hardware mute on the mic, maybe when you were touching it.
How about now?
Yep. Now you're back.
Oh, that's cool.
I love that this was a question about what you've learned as a podcaster over 200 episodes. And apparently you just learned your mic has a hardware mute button.
Today I learned if you tap it on the top, it mutes.
Yeah, it does.
That's cool. It's a new mic, Sam. It's a new mic.
Okay.
I mean, I learned a ton from making this show 200 times, but I think the thing that I would say to people who are doing anything creative or putting anything out into the world, which is like probably going to sound a little bit trite, but like we get a lot of really lovely notes and comments from listeners, and then we get like the occasional like finger wag, blah blah blah. I'm just of the perspective that personally, for me to be able to do this show 200 times and however many more times I do it, like I just have to do it the way that I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I understand that that probably has cost opportunities because I say fuck. And it probably has been off putting to certain people who don't like the sort of like bluntness with which I view and describe the world. And probably a million other things that I don't need to know about because they would make me sad. The point is,
Yeah.
I'd rather make a show that is really for some people, even if it alienates other people, than try to make a show that's kind of for everybody.
Yeah.
And I just would say for anybody who's doing anything in the world, whether you're making a podcast or you're writing a book or you're making music or you're giving speeches or whatever, like, first of all, it's way easier for people to sit behind a keyboard and accuse you of whatever the fuck who haven't done shit in front of anybody than it is to actually do something. And second of all, like, be really for a smaller group of people than just palatable to
Yeah.
everybody. Cause like, what's the fun in that? What's the fun in that?
There's no fun in that, I would say.
Yeah. Fuck that noise. I don't want to do that ever.
All right, cool. All right. Well, I was
All
going to
right.
say, we're going to stop being so navel gazy, but that's really kind of the theme of the whole episode.
That's
So
the
we're
whole
just
point of
gonna
retrospection.
Keep staring into these belly buttons.
Okay. I get to ask you a question now. Stop it.
Okay. Okay. I shut up now.
And that's what makes Sam a great co-host. I shut up now. What was your favorite episode? What was your favorite episode this season?
I had a really hard time landing on one. It was a combination of liking basically everything we've made and also having a horrible memory. So
Sure.
what I landed on for this is the episode we did on races.
Mm,
And what I liked about that one is that I think so it's a very specific thing, right? Like we're doing an episode on not just like decision making in general, but like literally this thing called a racy or its various incarnations. Let's talk about that. And I think we actually approached it in a pretty nuanced way because the glib kind of ham-fisted way we could talk about racies is like, fuck racies, what are you doing? Like, it's the wrong thing. You're not going to get what you want out of it. Like, we
sure.
mostly agree with that, but there's the impulse behind the racy and the desire to make a racy and get clarity on those types of things. I think we both really recognize as incredibly valuable and the type of thing that we can work with. So I just liked that we tackled a very specific thing that lots of people are doing, and we gave some really concrete things about what to do instead. I think it's when I pictured this podcast and what we're trying to do, that episode for me feels kind of like just a good example of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's also funny. I was talking to Allie yesterday about stuff, and one of the best org design lessons that I learned many times from working with Allie, because I tend to get very like beautiful mindy about systems thinking and be like, I need to understand all of the blah, 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 is Allie is very, very good, as I'm sure you know, at like finding a specific pattern or element of work and being like, this is representative of everything. So we just need to deeply understand this and we can mostly understand the big thing. And the racy episode felt like a really good example of that, of just like,
Right.
take this one marker of complication and unpack it and understand it. And you'll kind of understand what a complicated answer to a complex problem really is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really smart. And I've just started working with Allie on a project. So I think I've always known that about her just conceptually, but now I get to experience it viscerally as her partner on a project. So I'm excited for that. I mean, it's another thing. It's like, it's the whole bring an agenda to every meeting as like an example of like, oh, we're going to make meetings better. And it's that same impulse, like, yeah, like let's make meetings better, but there's other things to do. So yeah, I think it's just a fun one. I hope we find more of those things. If you have examples like that, where you think there's something in your organization that everybody does and like holds up as this example of, oh, we're doing it really well, and you have a suspicion that it's a complicated solution to a complex problem, you should send us an email.
Hit us up. Yeah, we
All right,
want to
what
hear
was
that.
your favorite episode this year?
My favorite episode was Leaders as Org Designers. And it was a really fun episode to make. And it was one of those things where at at a point in time, it was like coming up a lot in my work, both externally and internally. It felt really good to sort of take a position about it when you and I made that episode and to be in dialogue about it. And then subsequently, it has informed so many other things, including like how I think the future ready is going to be structured, how I'm thinking about my own role and what about it is really subject matter expertise and what about it is really org design, how I'm thinking about like org design as basically a subsystem in our structure, blah, blah, blah. It was one of those things that um, was both a summarization and a distillation of what I had learned that actually turned into the seed of learning a bunch more stuff and really informing significant choices in my work. And I love it when that happens. And now that that's happened and now that it's so present, it feels very like red pill to me, where now I'm looking around and I'm like, this is actually the answer to a bunch of things, like to a bunch of things. So I would say that one.
That's cool. It makes me want to go back and listen to the episode. It sounds like it was a good one. I don't remember it, but
it was a good one. On the other side of things, what episode would you do over if you could have a what's that called? A
mulligan?
A McGulligan? A McGillicuddy.
Mulligan.
From the I Love Lucy show. A mulligan.
It's not that so I wouldn't want it to be a mulligan in the sense that it replaces what we made, because I think what we made was really good, but it would just be another crack at that same basic idea. And it was the all the small things episode. So the mundane stuff episode. I think there's a lot more that we could talk about in the category of like the mundane stuff to sweat if you're trying to do this work in an organization. And I think that one kind of feels like an introductory sort of episode. And I feel like we could do a deeper level on it, because for me, and I get a little bit into this in the episode, there's like this paradox of the really boring, mundane shit where you hear me say something and you're like, how does that actually matter? Like, that's just you being very persnickety about a way to do something. And that just being like a peephole into a larger universe of like how we do everything. And I don't know that I was particularly articulate about that aspect of it in the episode. And I'd love to take another crack at kind of the philosophical connection to really caring about the mundane stuff.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I do feel like the mundane is your love language, basically. So I think probably once a season, we should just give you an episode where you can really be comfortable.
I bring my backlog of stuff that I've
just
thought about, and we just kind of rattle through it.
And we just let you have your time to shine and just talk about habits and routines and technology and passwords and shit. I don't know. We should just let the old man have one. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, we'll have that in the quiver for like, if you're ever sick or something, you can't make an episode. It's like, all right, just let him loose for an hour and he'll do his thing.
You definitely don't need me there. Also, Jack, I want you to link in wherever you put this to the thing. Jack DM'd me a thing the other night that was from, I think, a podcast where two women are talking and one of them doesn't use the calendar on her. She uses no digital calendar.
Yeah. I saw that too.
And the other one is like, I'm breaking out in hives. No, because I'm also like incredibly organized. But it tickled me.
I mean, there are aspects of that relationship that I think is true for our relationship as well, but maybe not the calendar
for
thing.
Sure. Probably not the calendar thing. I'm pretty wedded to that.
Yeah. All right. What about you? What's your episode that you want to take another crack at?
Well, I mean, I would obviously love to be there for a future Jason Fox episode. He and I got to catch up the other night one on one because I wasn't there for the recording and it was just like super fun. And I felt like I could talk to him for 3 more hours and hopefully
Yep.
will someday. But besides that, because I just missed it, not exactly this season, but like I really have a hankering to do a bunch more on Future of HR. I mean, now that we have so many Future of HR projects, like when you
Totally.
and I made that arc, it was a very well researched and very well validated, like
Yeah.
early body of work. And we
Yeah.
had done, we had done work with clients that was very related. Like we had proof of concept
Yeah.
and we had real market validation of the ideas and we had first projects launched. But now, a year later, like we know so much that we didn't know
Yeah.
then. And now I just feel like there's so much expertise in the Ready about what HR is and what it should become and what it's holding it back. And like I think if I went back and listened to those episodes now, I'd be like yelling at the speaker to just be like, no, you need to
Yeah.
say this thing. This is actually the most important thing. So I
Totally.
would love another crack at that.
Yeah, this would be a really good one to bring some of our colleagues in, the folks who have
Yeah.
been doing this work for the last year. Either they can just take my spot or they can join us as a third or a fourth. But there's a lot of expertise that has been developed over the last year that did not show up in our version of those podcasts because we just hadn't done it yet.
We just hadn't done it like that yet. Yeah, now
Yeah.
I'm just to the point where I like want every CHRO in America to meet Sharon and be like,
Yep.
listen to her. Like listen to what is happening.
I mean, that was
out
true
there.
before FOHR too, because Sharon's
That's true.
great.
Fair
now
enough.
It's super true.
Now it's super true. Super true.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Your turn to ask a question or my turn to ask a question?
My turn. I asked the question. I'm
you're
the question
asker.
asker.
Okay.
Let's do this one. If you had to give 2024 a theme, doesn't just have to be podcast related, just life theme. What is the theme of your 2024?
My theme is repotting. So taking a plant from one place and sticking it in another. There's like so many of those things that have happened for me this year. So I've literally moved many states. I moved from Virginia to New York earlier this year after living in Virginia for like 6.5 years or so. So there's that whole very literal kind of repotting of myself and my routines and just being in a new place. My client engagements this year, where there have been years at the Ready where I was just like on one client for the entire year, or maybe two. I had several client engagements this year, more than a typical year. And across those engagements, I was playing, in some cases, some different roles, trying to be more focused on kind of like bringing other people along at the Ready into the project steward role. So there's just been, it was not just another year of like doing what I've always been doing in some ways, which felt cool. And then obviously, we've already talked about it, but doing this podcast and the significant amount of work that has gone into moving into the co-host seat is very, very new this year. And that's what I'm landing on, repotting.
Nice. What
and now
kind
I'm
of
thriving. I'm in a bigger pot. And my leaves are green and huge and big, and I'm just a happy plant.
Just a happy plant. What kind of plant would you consider yourself to be?
What is this? I think it's a check-in round. This is a mid-episode check-in round.
Yeah, man. Do you know any kinds of plants, just out of curiosity?
I was going to have to try to just describe it, probably. Let's say a fern.
Okay, I could see you as a fern.
Are ferns resilient? I'm a cactus. Yeah. No, I'm kind of spiky. I'm a bit more
You're
of a cactus.
Not a cactus. I don't think you're a cactus. Okay. I could see you as a fern. Ferns don't like sun. They like shade.
I kind of like the sun, though.
Oh, I thought you didn't like the sun. I guess because you tell me about like staying inside on vacation.
Well, I
just
do
assumed
like
you didn't like the sun.
Sometimes being inside, but
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to circle back around. I'm a
Right.
mighty oak tree.
Okay, that's not a plant. Uh,
Well, it absolutely is a plant.
I guess trees count.
Trees are
I just am
plants.
thinking in terms of like pots.
Like
Like
a house
you
plant.
don't put a lot of
Yeah,
oak trees in pots. Anyway,
that's a good point.
this has
What about
gotten
you?
wild.
What's your theme?
I mean, what I wrote in the sticky was like the theme of 2024 is it was fucking roller coaster. This year was like dog years. I feel like I have lived a decade this year. Um, just like I think that it is a year, and I kind of feel like I say this every year. So like, God help me. But this year, I think at work, we really invented and clarified our identity and a a slightly different future for ourselves. And and a lot of that work, like a lot of the work that you're going to hear about on this podcast at the beginning of next year, a lot of the work around the future of HR, a lot of the changes that we've made internally, like very much felt wind in the sails, and just felt like, okay, this is a hard business. It is hard to do disruption and resistance work professionally, but like we are now like tacking towards something that really feels right for us. And the feeling of doing that in a boat that was still a little bit leaky with like a little bit of an anchor on it, which was like core businesses that need to probably be wound down, old ways of working, lots and lots of things in ROS that needed shedding or reinvention in order to really let us sail. It's just like my brain has been in the tension of looking back and looking forward constantly, nonstop for a year. So, like, on the one hand, I wouldn't have it any other way because it's really exciting. And I think we're in the best spot that we've ever been in. And on the other hand, like, I don't know if I can actually take another year like this. Like I might just not make it. So like that on the work front. And then on the personal front, I have really re-engaged in things outside of work that are very meaningful to me. So like I am playing a lot of music. I am studying again with a teacher. I did prioritize like going, for a week just to play. I'm really engaged in swimming and actually like making improvements. Like there's a bunch of things outside of work that I think probably because of the intellectual and emotional challenge of work this year, I've been like, I can't just sprint and recover. I have to have other things that I care about and am invested in if I'm going to work like this.
Yeah.
So I've really, and a lot of those things are like really exciting, like I'm playing in bands, I'm writing a book, like there's just a lot of cool stuff happening. So it's felt like I owe it, like Sam is, you've heard me talk about this. I talk about it at the Ready all the time. There's a book from a while back that actually a client pointed me to years and years ago called Dual Transformation. There was an article about it. I think it was a book. There's an article about it in HBR. There's a great podcast. Anyway, I feel like we are squarely in the middle of dual transformation. And if you read any of that content, you will understand why dual transformations are necessary for any business, full stop, and also really fucking hard.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, here's to next year not having to be quite as intense. But, you said you feel like you've said this before. So
I do.
Fingers crossed. I don't know.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
All right.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, final question, final answer. What show is that from? Final answer.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Phone a friend. That is the one.
That was also my Regis Philbin impression.
It was really good, Sam.
Thank you.
It was really good. What is your hope for the show in 2025?
So, two hopes. One, that we just get a shit ton more listeners. Like, I think this is a good podcast and more people should listen to it. So I hope that happens. And then the other thing, the thing that I wrote down here, and back to my point about my hope for this podcast more generally, is about the very specific episode topic. So I hope we get so weirdly specific with our episodes that it feels like we've been reading your journal. So I hope everybody who's listening to this podcast right now has one episode from us in the next year where they're like, what the fuck? Like, how did they know that was
Are they in my house
that I was working on? And maybe like the rest of the episodes, like, yeah, like that's interesting. I can see where they're coming from, but I want one to be like, what is going on? And that I will consider that a success.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That is so creepily exciting.
It's like creepily wholesome.
We're in your bushes
about it, but like also
goggles. We're in your office posing as janitorial workers.
Exactly.
I don't know. I'm really happy with the show. Jack told me that we're almost at 1 million downloads, which is just like wild. So I want to appreciate that and like be in gratitude for that, because I am. And I don't want to let that keep us from trying shit. So the depth finding series is we're going to start recording that in like a couple of weeks. We've been talking about it for ages. There are a bunch of reasons that we waited, but I'm super excited about it. And it's like, I hope it fucking slaps. I hope you guys love it. And if not, we're going to do another thing. Like, we're going to keep doing things. And I'm excited about that. And I would like just love to be in more contact with our listeners. Like, we get an email here and there. It's really nice. You're better at responding to them than I am. But like, could we do a live event where we actually get to meet a bunch of you guys? Like, could we have a community where we like hang out and chat once a month? I don't know. It just 200 episodes of speaking into this microphone at one other person and knowing that there are thousands of you out there is like, I do sometime want to meet you. So hopefully
let's do it
someday. Yeah.
That's someday in 2025.
Yeah.
All
right. Sam,
did we finish the retro?
This thing? I think we
are going to continue the podcast,
retroed.
Right? We're continuing. You were going to drop the bomb. This is when you drop the bomb.
Hit stop record.
Okay. Bye, everyone. It was good knowing you. Okay, cool. We're good. Let's wrap this. Let's wrap this up. We're always looking for new topics for the show. So if you have a pattern that you're having trouble changing, especially if it's hyper specific, shoot us a note at podcast@theready.com. One other quick thing to know here is that we are doing a listener survey right now, and it is at the URL, theready.com/podcast, and there's a button at the top. And it's really important for us to get as many folks as possible to fill out that survey. And if you are all the way at the end of this episode and hearing me say this right now, you are precisely the type of listener we would love to have fill out this survey. So please do that for us. It'll be live through January 12th.
This show, like the last 200 shows, has been engineered by Taylor Marvin. Taylor, thank you for hanging with us all of this time. Maybe you are also one of the people that I'll get to meet in 2025. We really appreciate all of your behind the scenes work. Same goes for Jack Van Amberg. Sam and I could not make this show without our producer. He is the loveliest, kindest, most hardworking and conscientious human being I know. At Work with the Ready is created by The Ready, where we help organizations around the world change the way that they work. Thank you guys for listening. Have a very happy new year.